How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Ruffle Reality, and welcome back to a brand new video. So today, guys, we're going to be taking a look at this theory of mine that maybe Giovanni might reappear in future Pokémon Switch installments based on the ability to travel through wormholes at will. So let's get started with this. So for those of you who do not know, guys, specifically in Ultra Sun and Moon, Giovanni actually gained the ability to travel through wormholes to different dimensions. This is actually noted right at the end of the Rainbow Rocket event that you do specifically in the games. Now, for those of you who do not know about this, I'll give you a quick rundown of what Rainbow Rocket really is if you haven't played Ultra Sun and Moon. So for those who do not know, Rainbow Rocket was this rebirthed version of Team Rocket that returned in Ultra Sun and Moon, which you had to take on. Now, what was really cool about them was that they actually were essentially kind of a conglomerate of all the previous evil teams into one. You had, of course, Team Rocket, you know, because it's in the name, Rainbow Rocket. You had just normal Team Rocket grunts. You had specifically Team Aqua. You had Team Magma. You had Team Galactic, you had freaking Team Plasma, Team Flare, and of course, right at the end, you also had Giovanni to take on, which was very interesting. So, generally looking at that, guys, it's a very interesting kind of collection of things to have in one. And then also, you have Giovanni right at the end that you have to defeat, who's the final boss, and also the person that put together the Rainbow Rocket team, or a Team Rainbow Rocket, rather. So, here's the thing that happens after you defeat him. So once you've defeated Giovanni, it actually really is interesting because he notes that he was foolish to fight a kid with all his might and that he'll be leaving the Ether Foundation, or rather the Ether Paradise, noting that Team Rocket, or rather Team Rainbow Rocket, will never fail. Then he steps aside and says he's hoping to meet you again, in the future I assume. Now this is very interesting, right, because you know, he just gives up on this whole scheme here. He created this whole giant new conglomerate, this evil group or whatever, but he doesn't do much with it. But he does though point out that Team Rainbow Rocket will never fail and eventually will return in one way or another. So that already gives us, you know, kind of an image of Team Rainbow Rocket still existing in one way or another. In previous installments, you know, in previous games, he kind of just dozes off and disappears and we don't really know much about him, and he kind of just leaves all his grunts and all his, you know, fellow people behind. So it's very interesting. But that's not really the reason to why I find this theory to be plausible. The reason why I find it plausible is because of this. So here's the thing, after you defeat him and after you do all the talking with all the other characters, right at the end, when you think everything is done with this event in Pokemon Ultra Sun and Moon, you actually see Giovanni walking up on this, I guess, balcony, and then he says some interesting things, and the final thing that happens is the thing that shocked me the most. He says things like, "Now, what new world shall I unleash my evil schemes upon?" Why is this very important? Well, right after he says that, he actually goes in through, or rather he disappears through a wormhole to, I assume, a different world, a different dimension, a different place. Now, why is this important? Well, it tells us that essentially Giovanni has the ability to travel to different dimensions or different worlds. He specifically said different world. What new world? New world shall I unleash my evil schemes upon? This is very interesting, guys. This is very, 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 very interesting, and I'm quite amused by the thought of this maybe connecting to some other rumors and theories we've heard about, but I find this to be very, very peculiar. So we'll get further into it, but I want to keep that, guys, keep that in mind, right? Keep that in mind that this could connect to other things, but let's continue with this theory. So now you may ask, this doesn't really tell you much, right? This could lead to him, you know, maybe not appearing anywhere again in any Pokemon franchise or game, but this could also lead to him appearing in the Pokemon Switch games, especially if they bring back stuff like Ultra Beasts and wormholes. And when you think about it, alternative universes or alternative, like, dimensions is something we've been seeing a lot in Pokemon. Even since, like, Oras, we've been seeing stuff like that. The idea that there are separate dimensions is something that goes hand in hand with the Pokemon franchise as of recent time. They've been doing a lot of that stuff where they diverge their way of doing things. For example, rebooting even the anime and making new movies, or rather rebooting the movie franchise and going back to Kanto and restarting it and having a Alola Pokemon in Kanto, which is something we never really had back in Kanto originally with the anime, you know, season 1. So my point is, having him appear in a different version of, let's say, Alola, again in a, you know, in a different world or a new world, or definitely maybe even in a new version of Kanto even, who knows? My point is that he could definitely reappear again. So now you may ask, how does this relate to Pokemon on the Switch? Well, here are a few points I want to make in regards to that. So for point 1, we know that Ultra Sun and Moon were the send-off games for the franchise. They're kind of like the final goodbye to all the previous things that we've seen in a way. And why is this important, you ask? Well, because we got kind of to catch every single Pokemon in that, game in Ultra Sun and Moon. We got to catch ourselves every legendary. We got to take on every single evil team leader again, and finally take on Giovanni. But Giovanni was the only one in there who actually used a wormhole to disappear. He was the only one who disappeared from that situation through a wormhole to a different place. And the fact that Giovanni went through the trouble to collect all these evil team leaders is kind of interesting. The question is, did he collect them from specifically this dimension he was within, or did he collect them from different dimensions and bring them to Alola? Like, I'm really confused about what happened there, or how that makes any sense, or how that really works, but it's kind of interesting when you think about it. Now, another point I want to make is, Giovanni could appear as a villain in a potential reboot of the franchise, and if Pokemon on the Switch is like, let's say, a Kanto remake, or maybe even a reboot of the whole franchise once again, the same way they did with the movies, then we can definitely speculate that he could definitely appear in this new alternative version of Kanto, with like new places and new Pokemon unfamiliar to him and unfamiliar to us, because they would be a new world. Keep that in mind. A new world, which means they could be totally different from anything we've ever seen before. So keep that in mind. Now, the next point is, where else would Giovanni go if not to this new world which we will be playing within? Now, the reason why this makes sense is because Game Freak showing us that he has the ability to travel through wormholes to different dimensions and different worlds and different, universes. Them showing us that must mean that he must be returning in the future, clearly, because he's the only character I can imagine returning from, Gen 7 in a future installment that might be something like a remake. Like, maybe he returns to a different version of Kanto, a new world that's different from the Kanto we used to know in the past. Or maybe he returns to a brand new, or goes to a brand new, generation or, thing and whatnot. You get the point. In general, I'm trying to say that nothing here is for certain, and he could definitely appear in a brand new Pokemon installment as the new villain. Now, the next point here is one that I mentioned earlier as well, and that is the movies. Now, the movies are getting rebooted, so does this make sense for the games as well? Do the games make sense to reboot the same way you rebooted the specifically movie or the films or whatever you want to call them? I feel like that would kind of make sense, because if you think about it like this, Ultra Sun and Moon were the send-off games. They were the final games. Sun and Moon were kind of this like weird mishmash of different things, hinting towards Kanto with Alola forms and whatnot, and all this stuff. Right, if you kind of combined all that into a giant mess, right? And then you take Ultra Sun and Moon, which had every single evil villain returning, had every single one of the legendary Pokemon catchable, and the ability to travel through wormholes and whatnot. If you take all that into one, and you do a little bit of thinking, doesn't it make sense that those would be the final games before we kind of restart the franchise again, but, we reboot back and do Kanto once again and back up again through the, generations. So we go back to Kanto, but it wouldn't be the Kanto we knew before. It would be a Kanto that's different. Maybe we don't start from the same town. Maybe we don't start from Pallet Town. Maybe Pallet Town doesn't even exist. Maybe it's a different version or something totally different looking. New Pokemon we've never seen before, or maybe Pokemon we have seen, but from generations that didn't exist in Kanto previously, or Pokemon that didn't exist from, that don't live in Kanto are now in this new world, this new Kanto, so to say. Now again, they could do this, and they could have Giovanni reappear, but it doesn't have to be Kanto specifically. He could reappear on this new generation, or this new world which we've never been to before, and for the Switch. Like, again, it's really hard to determine this stuff, but I seriously feel like, based on the fact that he has the ability to travel through wormholes to different worlds, he most likely will return in some way or shape in Pokemon Switch version. Maybe not the first Switch game, maybe not even the second one, maybe the third one or the fourth one. Who knows? But we know that all the Pokemon main series games are now going to be on the Pokemon, or rather on the Nintendo Switch. So it would make sense also to have Giovanni reappear again, because otherwise you're leaving him as a loose thread. Where did he go? What did he do? Will he reappear? Will he not reappear? You would sooner or later have to answer that question, I feel like. So yeah, guys, as a conclusion to this theory, Giovanni has the ability to travel through wormholes into different dimensions. He states that he's going to find a new world to wreak havoc upon, and based on the things that we know so far, looking at the movies and how the movies are kind of rebooting the franchise, and how Ultra Sun and Moon are also kind of like the final huzzah and the kind of final push for the previous generations, it would make sense that they would restart the generations or reboot them in a sense and kind of start things fresh in a different new world with things that don't, kind of link back to previous generations with maybe new Pokemon, or maybe things that even are related to back to previous generations, like a remake and whatnot. Who knows? But I feel like a reboot of the franchise would make sense, and it's also things that have been said by, you know, rumors and stuff. Leakers have said that that's what's going to be happening, but then again, we don't know. This is my theory. I would love to know your opinions, guys. Let me know in the comments down below, and thank you so much for watching. My name is Ruffle Rallet. Have a good day, and bye-bye.